Good morning, everyone. Welcome. My name is Vicki Hagberg. I'm the Regional Director of Northland Small Business Development Center. We serve the 7 counties of northeastern Minnesota, and we're really excited today to bring you a webinar on Generative AI 101. So we're going to be covering the basics today, and we're welcoming our presenter, Justin Castor, to share some knowledge about this really important topic for small businesses. But before we get into the fun AI stuff, I have a couple things to share with you about Northland SBDC. And so go ahead, Justin, on to the next slide. We'll talk about our upcoming webinars. So this is the first of 5 webinars in a series we're doing in spring 2025, Generative AI 101. But we're going to be talking about some cool topics on marketing, integrating AI into workflows. And for those solopreneurs that we often serve at the SBDC, we're going to be helping you out as well. Jen AI, your new chief of staff, coming in June. And so, the SBDC, go ahead, Justin, we can go on to the next slide. If you're not familiar, or if you haven't tapped into our services, we provide no-cost consulting to small businesses and aspiring entrepreneurs, thanks to grant funding that we receive at the federal, state, and local level. All of our work with entrepreneurs is provided, again, at no cost. You never get a bill for working with us, and it's totally confidential. We never talk about your ideas or your finances or your challenges as a business owner without your explicit permission to do so. We often focus on finances and strategy, helping people develop cash flow projections, walking through the business finance process overall, developing a business plan. We work with a lot of folks in the region that are buying or selling a business as well, identifying competitors. And we have experts in human resources, marketing, QuickBooks, and e-commerce as well that can help you out. If you are not already working with a consultant, I'd encourage you to go to northlandsbdc.org and click the red request for services button and fill out the form to work with us. We'll get you connected with a consultant. We have folks all across the region of Northeast Minnesota, all 7 counties and all our parts of 5 Native nations where we share geography. And if this is not your region, if you're located elsewhere in Minnesota or elsewhere in the United States, there is an SBDC that serves you as well. And so just go to the SBA's website and search for your local SBDC, Small Business Development Center, and these services are available to everyone. One last housekeeping thing for folks that are attending live. There is going to be a survey that pops up at the end of the presentation today. So as soon as you close Zoom, it'll pop open in a browser window. We would really love to hear from you. What kind of training would you like to see in the future? How did we do today? So please take just a minute or so and fill out that survey at the end of the session today. We'd really appreciate it. And with that, I'll turn it over to our presenter, Justin Castor, to introduce himself and dive into the topic of generative AI.
Sounds great. Thank you, Vicki. So just to start, I thought I'd give a little context on who I am and my background and the roles that I have currently in my professional life. And to start here, first and foremost, I'm an investor with Groove Capital, so an angel investor investing in high growth startup companies. And secondly, I'm involved, a co-founder of an initiative to support entrepreneurs from underserved communities in the Twin Cities. And I'm just going to go to full screen here. And that's focused on Minnesota, and we support them through one-on-one counseling and support, as well as some group training on generative AI. And then lastly, at General Mills, I am a growth advisor and innovation coach for the management teams and our product innovation teams. So that's kind of my background professionally. So to keep moving along here. So the agenda for today is we're covering through the first 3 sections, some high level information. So as we designed the webinar today, We know folks will be at different levels of knowledge and background on generative AI. So we'll kind of assume that most people are starting from kind of a baseline knowledge. And so that's how this is sort of built. So we'll go through that context in the first three sections, going through and defining generative AI, talking about the disruption and the implications, as well as some high-level tools overview. And then we're going to, as Vicki mentioned, get into using the tools. That's where the magic happens, is starting to work with the tools. And then we'll kind of conclude with some thoughts on principles for using the AI and some other closing thoughts in a conversation of any Q&A. So if click in here, you're kind of going to, so our first question for you is, it'd be great. There should be a poll that's popping up. I see it on my screen. I think you see it on my screen as well. Is would love to understand your knowledge on generative AI today. And we put a sentence in there to help qualify when we say knowledge. What is it? We'd love to get that information and kind of think about that as we use, talk about this webinar. It looks like a lot of folks have some knowledge in the intermediate side of things, which is great. So that's the fun part about this, is we can all learn from each other a little bit if we get that chat function going. But thank you for that. And that will also help inform our webinars going forward. So I'm going to minimize that poll there. And so let's get started with some definitions, if we could. So first and foremost, we have this broader definition of artificial intelligence that is often associated with the generative AI developments of the last couple of years. And on my left side, there's a visual that helps me kind of put it in context. And artificial intelligence broadly, which has been around for decades, is this idea of computer systems performing tasks that need human intelligence. And then you have subsets, machine learning, deep learning, that again have been around for a while. And we see this in our everyday life, right? Our Netflix accounts, our Siri on our phone, Amazon kind of knows what you're going to buy, right? And so artificial intelligence has been around for a while. The generative AI subset is under deep learning, and that specifically is where we're talking about intelligence that's creating new content in the form of text and images, and it's using vast amounts of training data, looking at those patterns, and producing outputs that are very human-like. That nesting doll image at the bottom is the way I kind of like to think about where generative AI sits within artificial intelligence. Another way to think about generative AI specifically, and if you go online and you ask someone to define it, you're going to see a lot of different frameworks. The three buckets I like to use is we have kind of these pre-trained large GPDs, transformer models, large language models, and those are the things that we'll talk a little bit about today more. OpenAI's ChatGPT, Google's Gemini, those big frontier models. And then we have some other groups that we probably see integrating into our life as well. And that's like we're seeing AI within Facebook and Microsoft applications. And even like if you use Canva for marketing, you're seeing it integrated an AI function within Canva. And then you have sort of native AI apps, and you're going to see a whole list of those later on. And those are very purpose-built apps, artificial intelligence powered. And this presentation today was built on Beautiful AI, which is an AI PowerPoint app that I'm a fan of. So that kind of lays out the different ways to think about the generative AI space. Another way to think about generative AI and what it is and why it's impactful is it's a general purpose technology. And this image kind of shows over the course of humanity some different general purpose technologies. These are technologies that have transformational impact across many industries, many parts of our life. You know, you think about the printing press, you think about kind of moving over to the right, plastics or mobile technology and the internet. These are all general purpose technologies. The generative AI part of artificial intelligence is a general purpose technology. And this general purpose technology classification, what's interesting is when we look at how we understand that impact side of it, is it often is directly related to its adoption rates, right? And you can see some of those technologies from the previous slides mapped here. This is a visual by Andreessen Horowitz, one of the biggest AI venture firms. And on the left, you can see the telephone, and on the right, you can see the internet and the cell phone, right? And this idea of an S curve represents like how fast is it adopted in the market? How many people are using it and how fast? And so it sort of makes an S. You can see that telephone is a more gradual S. And then as you move to the right, the more recent general purpose technologies, the cell phone, the internet, it's kind of like a straight up. It's not even really much of an S, right? These adoption rates are huge. And this has implications for like, look at how much time people had to adjust to the telephone, right? Coming into our lives. So the internet and the cell phone, we haven't had as much time to adjust and understand the implications from a societal level. So coming to probably the most prominent generative AI chatbot or app by OpenAI, you can see the adoption rate here, the time it took to get to 100 million users, the fastest adoption rate of any app of all time, right? So this S curve is basically straight up. It's not an S curve. And so, and the other part of this is it's really honestly layered. Part of the reason is it's layering on top well-adopted technologies, general purpose technologies like the cell phone and the internet, right? And so that's part of the reason everyone has a cell phone. A lot of people have computers, part of the reason why, but also just the power of the technology itself. And thinking about this presentation, it's like, okay, let's go through some examples of recent headlines of things that are showing up in our life. And I just going back to January 1st, 2025 through today. You can see on the screen here, these are really big headlines that when you look at the numbers or the impact that these have had in our broader lives, like Microsoft investing $80 billion in infrastructure. Then you see some of the specific companies in the middle of this launching really disruptive new innovations on the AI front, improving their models. OpenAI with their reasoning model, Google with their new Gemini model, and then DeepSeek, which we'll talk a little bit more about from China. And then obviously everyone else reacting to those things just in a month's time frame. And then obviously the US government, I'm sure you heard, partnered up with SoftBank and OpenAI and NVIDIA to make an announcement of $500 billion in AI. And then obviously Elon Musk is in the news a lot, but he's most recently in the news for bidding $100 billion for OpenAI, right? And so because this is moving so fast, like as you try to get your head around it, this is a quote by Brian Balfour, kind of a product innovation guru that I like to learn from and reference. And he has a podcast through his company Reforge, and they had one of the guests was referencing quicksand when I was listening to it the other day, and it's like that's perfect. It's a perfect analogy for how I feel and how I think a lot of us feel with what's happening with generative AI specifically. Everything is moving so fast, as you can see on that previous slide.
Months ago, Justin, I thought I knew what AI was going to look like a year from now.
Yes.
Now I have no idea.
Exactly.
Things are moving
Exactly.
so they're really accelerating really quickly in
Right.
this field, I feel.
exactly. And to Vicky, to pick up on that, it's like, so this slide was meant to talk about the financial impact in one day. So if you go back to when DeepSeek launched on the 27th of January, this new Chinese model that is able to do a lot of the same things for so much less, right? They did it like right after that $500 billion announcement. You can see the impact of your 401k, right? NVIDIA, one of the biggest stocks in your 401k, dropped 20% because people are like, well, if they don't need as much compute power because this can be done easier, maybe they're not going to sell as much chips. So huge impact in our lives happening from all these developments. And Sam Altman, one of the poster boys of the Gen AI space, OpenAI CEO behind ChatGPT, acknowledges the impressiveness of this model and how much it's changed even their launch period and what they're going to do. So much is shifting. The broader economic impact is part of the story here and why people are excited, right? This is McKinsey. It's maybe a little bit hard to see, but on the left side is they've sort of separated out the economic impact into new use cases for businesses to sell products. Is kind of that one of the circles here, and that's the dark circle. And then the other blue circle is just like the efficiencies that everyday workers and entrepreneurs and businesses get from using these technologies on their existing tasks and their workflow. And what it translates to, if you on the right side, is there's about 11 to 13 trillion dollars from that broader artificial intelligence, the stuff that's been around for a while, $1 trillion of economic impact. When you layer on just what's happening in the last 2 years with generative AI specifically, you're talking about an incremental, in some cases over doubling, $10 trillion of economic impact that McKinsey's estimating for the economy and businesses. So huge impact. When you bring it down to like an individual level, there's been research done. There was a group of researchers. This is published in the Harvard Business School that went out and went to BCG, Boston Consulting Firm, took management consultants of different capabilities, gave one group um, the tools of like ChatGPT and Gen AI, and the other group didn't have it. And across the board, they were much more capable, orders of magnitude in what they were able to accomplish with their core management consultant tasks. And what's interesting is the lowest performers actually rose way up in capability. So even the low performers can actually get a ton of value here from this and reach parity. We also see the impact of this outside of the business world in our everyday life in the cultural creative side of things. New York Times posted an article about a painting created by an AR powered robot that sold for $1 million. So real value there. Obviously, a bunch of other things happening with music and videos with AI. And you can see like the impact to the music industry. There's actually an AI restored Beatles song where they cleaned up a demo from John Lennon and it received a Grammy. Okay. So if you go to like a resource like CB Insights and you're like, all right, let's look at the industries impacted by generative AI, they have these huge reports that it's basically every industry. So any industry you're in, you're going to see this impact, if you haven't already, significantly. And Bill Gates, obviously someone familiar with technology trends and the disruption, says this is as fundamental as the microprocessor and the personal computer, the mobile phone, and it's going to change our entire lifestyle. So Vicky, I don't know if the chat function is working. Just thought it might be interesting for folks to kind of put in the chat. If not, we can come back to that. Just how Gen AI is impacting your life. What are you seeing so we can see what the impact is that we're experiencing in our everyday life. So is that chat function working?
Yeah, it is. I heard from folks where they're calling in from this morning a little
Yeah,
earlier. And
yeah,
so, I'll share one way that AI has
yeah,
impacted my life.
yeah,
I use AI a lot in my like daily workflow. And
yeah,
so, you know, if you've ever sat in front of like a screen typing an email and you just like can't, you're like, oh, nothing I write sounds right? It just doesn't
Yeah.
sound the way, or you write an email and it's like super long. I'm notorious for this. I'll write an email and it's super long. I can, pull that into, my favorite copy editor is probably Chat GPT, right? And
Yeah.
say, hey, can you shorten this, make it more concise, and add a couple of action bullets for my recipients at the top of the email?
Yeah.
And you know, stop myself from spinning my wheels. But would
Yeah.
love to see in the chat, how are
Yeah.
others using AI in your daily life? What about you,
Yeah.
Justin? What's one of the top ways that you've been using AI?
Oh, I mean, it's in that Future North initiative where I'm working with underserved entrepreneurs. One of the things that we're using is one of the tools we use today is Perplexity, which has a deep research function, and it's really to provide background on an industry
Yeah,
and and a baseline. And it's like we were working with a woman that's trying to launch a co-working space, and so we did a deep dive on the co-working space and how she could be coming in with some differential offerings. So that's
great.
an example of one. And daily, same. It's all kind of in my workflow. Still trying to remind myself sometimes, like to use it because you forget, but it is in my everyday workflow.
Yeah. We have a couple of comments in here.
Yep.
One is to have it read articles out loud.
Yep.
So some folks process better by reading words on a page. Other folks process better by hearing words out loud. And so
Yeah.
that's a great way. Or to summarize takeaways from an article or multiple articles. It's really great at that. Another comment that we have in the chat, AI has helped me to drastically increase efficiency in creating content for my business and
Yes.
generate new ideas. It's a great brainstormer. It's fantastic for helping to generate, social media content and blog
Yes.
content and things like that with some caveats, of course, but
Awesome. And
great.
save that, whoever's, please join Diane's upcoming webinars on marketing because it'll be great to have those examples chipping in for that webinar. But thank you for that, Vicky. Um, just thought we'd just give a high level. There's so many tools, but just really kind of level set, right? When we talk about these big, they're kind of like frontier models is a phrase some people use, the large language models that are in the news, ChatGPT, the ones that are sort of equivalent with that. And my recommendation is try to start working with a few of them and pick one that you're going to kind of try to integrate. Your company may be deciding for you based on their existing applications, but ChatGPT by OpenAI, Claude by Anthropic, Gemini by Google, Llama by Meta, which is open source, so a little bit different, Grok by XAI, and then Mistral AI out of France. These are some of the big AI tools. And what's interesting is they all have some, this is an analysis done by the blog, One Useful Thing, good blog. I would check that out and sign up if you can. But they did an analysis recently, like which one should you use? And they lay out like considerations, things that it can do. They all have unique superpowers. So you're sort of taking that into consideration for which ones you want to use for what. There's also a big movement on the large, the language models around open source versus closed. And there's websites like Hugging Face that have like over 1 million different open source LLMs. So if you're thinking about for your company how to integrate this at an organizational level, lots to think about, but opportunities galore. This is an analysis done recently by Andreessen Horowitz, looking at the top Gen AI web apps. They have one for mobile by monthly visits. You can see there's a ton of them, and there's a ton of venture funding going in. And so you're going to see these native and integrated AI apps show up. And so the more you can kind of like maybe say, oh, this is helpful for marketing, having your marketing folks kind of experiment with that. I just thought it'd be interesting to ask if folks can put in the chat kind of your favorite tools, and we probably won't sit on this too long, but just go ahead and put them in the chat. What I find is useful is to see the tools other people are using, and then if you can put a little tagline like "I use it for this," folks can kind of look at that and maybe put those on their checklist to try out because you are their peers, and they trust your advice. So go ahead and put the apps that you're using and maybe a short blurb on what you're using it for. and that'll be something we can reference. So take a minute to do that. And as you're doing that, I'm just going to kind of go through the three tools we're going to experiment with today. Chose ChatGPT. It's one of the big ones out there that I think all of us need to kind of understand that capability and that organization as one of the leaders. The second tool is Perplexity, which is more like a search LLM. And it's really great because it shows references in a super transparent way, where it's getting its information. Sometimes with the other LLMs, you're like, where did that come from? And when you're doing research, you need to reference back to the sources. Perplexity is great for that. I use it when I'm trying to make sure I know what it's coming from and dig deeper on the sources. And then if we have time, we'll see how time's going. I thought we could experiment with Adobe Firefly, which is a part of Adobe Express. It's a free tool. Firefly is to try out, and got to, just kind of understanding the image side of things that could be helpful for our marketing. So those are the three tools from that list that we're going to use. Just to set this up, a lot of capabilities exist, from a generative AI standpoint. The one that I think I use, in my profession, my daily life, is this idea of it being a boundless creative. We're going to experiment in the case studies and today with this capability. And as we set that up, I just want to talk about, something to consider here. And it's a weakness, but a superpower. So the first is a lot of these systems are set up, where their training data gives them some patterns, and they're predicting the next text in your prompt and trying to create that, right? It's much more complicated than that if you dig into it. But at the end of the day, they've also weaved in randomness. And so what happens is people use the word hallucinations. If you just kind of stick it in and you don't reference, it sometimes will produce things that don't exist. This is an example. My father and my brother are attorneys, trying to get them into this space, but they're referencing articles like this. And this was a case where 5 case law precedents used in a brief were completely made up, had dates, had details by the generative AI, right? And obviously this person got in trouble. So there's hallucinations to consider. That weakness is also a superpower, though. When we're talking about being creative, generating new things, it's exceptional. And when they do research to kind of say the quality of the ideas versus just a human by themselves, and then the super scenario is the human plus the AI, it's really a superpower, and they outperform, human by themselves. And what's interesting is Gen AI is using pattern recognition, and it's a recombination expert. So when we're thinking about new things, creativity, innovation, that's what the best entrepreneurs do, right? So Steve Jobs has a really famous quote around his, they were just connecting things at Apple, right? And they felt a little guilty because they were just like taking experiences and putting it together. The iPhone's a perfect example. Apple did not invent a lot of elements of the iPhone. They put it together. Very disruptive technology. So that's a superpower. One of the ways people measure creativity is what's called the alternative uses test, designed a while back, and it measures divergent thinking. And you take a common object and you try to think of as many non-traditional or non-obvious uses for that object. So I thought, hey, let's try it today. Okay. So in the chat, once you kind of get your list, I'm going to time a minute here. And I want you to think of as many non-traditional, non-obvious uses for the toothbrush. Okay, so I'll start the minute now. Go ahead and brainstorm. I'll kind of give you the 10-second warning, and then go ahead and throw in the chat what you came up with.
There's already some interesting ones coming in. One that came to mind for me, Justin, is
Yes.
to use it to like scratch and clean out the outside of my dog's ears.
Yes. Okay.
Naked.
Yeah. Love it. Love it. Think
Got
of those
lots of
ideas.
cleaning ones coming in. Cole had the
Yeah.
idea to use it as a splint. Use that
Okay. Yeah.
flat part.
I have a feeling, Vicky, we have a creative group, so we might
Yeah.
we might do pretty well.
Amanda said hairpin. I have kind of like you'd use a pencil, right? Twist it around and get for those of us with longer hair.
Yes.
Oh, a playing card holder. Stick it in the bristles. There's some great
Awesome.
ideas coming in here.
Great. So we're about
Needle.
at time. So if you haven't put it in there, go ahead and put it in the chat. Go ahead, Vicky.
All right. Got a lot of them in the chat right now.
Awesome. Okay, so the average person, right, generates about 5 to 10. Again, I think we have a creative group here, right? So I'm just going to demonstrate when I use ChatGPT, right, to do this within a second, it's giving me 100 uses. Not a second, sorry. Within that time frame, right? About that time frame, I'm getting nicely categorized uses, right? So again, like it's super creative, right? And then again, you combine it with human direction, really, really powerful too. And that test is a great way to exemplify it. So hopefully that gets us warmed up a little bit. The next thing we want to kind of shift to, and that's this idea of prompting, which I just did in ChatGPT. I put in a prompt, right? Go back here at the top, and I said I'm looking for some specific things. Okay. And so you can see on the left, like, what is a prompt? It's got these different sets of instructions that guide the language model on what you're looking for. So there's some best practices to think about for prompts. And I'm happy to, if afterwards you want to dig into resources more, I'll send you some courses. So much to learn there, a lot of different variations. But today we're going to keep it basic, which is there's some things you want to think about. And it's like, hey, you want to assign a role or perspective. So the example is as an expert business consultant, right? Or be specific, both in what you're looking for and what you want out of it. And you can see at the top some examples that maybe I use when I'm doing innovation related things, right? So if I'm launching a cookie product and looking for marketing slogans, these are some things that are good examples under each element here. Giving examples just so you can upload things to this AI, you can tell it, hey, it's like these products, you're giving it context, you're giving background as well in that fourth bucket. And then you're using a mindset that's testing and learning, right? You're having a conversation. And the way I think about it is like, all right, so I don't know if you've ever worked with a boss that's got like, here, go do this. And you're like, well, can you clarify, right? So think about the AI as just like a human, right? If you give them very basic instructions, you're not sure what you're going to get. It's going to be less meaningful, right? So really getting specific is super important. So we're going to integrate those best practices here and trying a few tools. Okay. So, and we're going to use the case study as my daughter. We have uh, uh, cookies everywhere. We got to sell a bunch of boxes of cookies. So this is the top of mind that I have. We're going to help Eileen sell some cookies with our activities today. True. 19907. I'm not trying to get you to buy any cookies in this webinar, but we're going to use that as an example. We're going to come and use these three tools. And the first one we're going to try is this ChatGPT. So if you can open up a window on your computer, if you're on your phone, you could do the web app, you got to download it, but hopefully folks are on a computer. You'll kind of see the example too if you're not on a computer. But let's go and open chatgpt.com. If you have an account, you're kind of working with something you already have established, which by the way, I do recommend you create an account. It's like $20 for a lot of these. And you can save all your searches and have projects and things. Okay, so definitely recommend that. For today, you don't have to. You might have you can see the screen I have on this computer screen here. It should just be a basic open window. Okay, so you don't even have to put in your email for this one. So go to that website, and I'm going to copy this set of prompts into the screen here. Let's see if I've got the first one's pretty basic, and I'll put the website in too, just for folks. Let's see if I got this.
And we'll share these prompts as well as our intention for those that are attending live or have registered for the webinar. We'll share this out But hopefully you'll be able to copy it and paste it into the chat for folks here,
Yeah.
Justin.
That's the first one. And so go ahead and start with
Um,
that's one of them. I'm going to go back here. I want you to start with the first one. Okay.
Justin, on
Let,
in the chat, the
yeah.
default is to send it just to other presenters. So you might need to change
Yeah.
the
I'm going to send
to
it to everyone.
everyone, and then everyone will be able to see.
Okay.
There we go.
While you're waiting for me to copy in, you can do the first prompt on your own, right? So just can you generate 20 ideas for our marketing and selling Girl Scout cookies? Put that one in first, okay? I'm going to recopy this. And then after you get that one, okay, you can open a new chat window in ChatGPT or maybe build on that thread. See, you can try both options. And do you see that now for everybody, the second prompt?
We're looking at the prompting activity one.
Yep, in the chat. I
Yep,
just
and
sent
then
the second one to everyone.
yep, you are a very creative salesperson and parent of a Girl Scout. You are
Yes,
tasked with helping your 8-year-old child with selling over 500 boxes of Girl
yes,
Scout cookies.
exactly. Now 500 will get her a trip to Disney World. It's not what we're expected to sell. This is prop 3. So I want you to kind of walk through. So try the first one, try the second one, okay? And you can see the second one has elements, okay? And if something isn't working, you can play around with it, but it has elements of constraints and context. Right? What are you looking for from ChatGPT? And then you can even try, if you have time, try that third one, which is like switching one of the sentences. You see the sentence bolded there? It's like take that one sentence and now instead of just saying different from each other, say inspired by superhero powers, right? Let's kind of see, is it showing different things? Is it showing the same? Just kind of showing how if we change variables or the persona, how this produces different results.
Mm.
And then feel free to, in the chat, as you go through these, just kind of share your observations. What are your observations from doing this exercise? And the other thing you might add in that chat is like, if you haven't used this before, or maybe you haven't used it in this context for creativity and brainstorming, like how might this be useful in your work or your personal? Go ahead and add that in. Yeah.
Diane had a good comment. Specificity equals better results.
Yes. What else?
You know, when I think about prompt engineering, I think it's an inherently challenging thing for a lot of folks to do
Yes.
because, you know, we might have as business owners a task like,
Yep.
oh, I need to get 5 new customers this month.
Yeah.
And you could tell ChatGPT, like, hey, I'm a business owner and I need to get 5 new customers this month. And it might give you some tips or some marginally useful information. But if
Yeah.
you can break that down into smaller subtasks
Yeah.
and be really specific about what you're looking for,
Yeah.
that's when the power unlocks. And it takes practice
Yeah.
to think about tasks in incremental pieces and to remember to be specific, like, you know, we're talking about an 8-year-old child. What is and
Right.
is not appropriate for them to do in
Yes.
selling Girl Scout cookies.
Yes. Exactly. And I mean, these are still pretty high level. You could get a lot more detailed here. Use some methods where you're kind of doing like chain prompt. I'm not going to get into too much of that, but you can do uh, prompts in sequence. So there's a lot you can do. The idea that you can, the more specific on the front end, the back end, the context, the better you're going to be able to use these tools. And just know the free version that you have is only one of their models. They've improved models, they have other capabilities, And so trying stuff out with other models and other capabilities within OpenAI ChatGPT or those other models is really interesting. Okay.
Mm. Harry said, I love the idea of assigning a role. I tried the prompt without the role and had much narrower
Yeah.
ideas.
Yeah. Exactly. All right. We're going to keep it moving here. We're going to open our next tool. Okay. Our next tool is Perplexity AI. So the website is Perplexity. I'm going to copy that in the chat. You do have to sign up for this one, but I think it's worth it to do. If you're game, it's a great tool. It's different in that this is the one that really shows all the sources of information. And it's kind of like search in a better way. And this is part of the reason firms like Google are really scared because if you can go instead of looking at a million different ads and things like this is giving you the answer and the sources proactively, it's a great tool alongside whatever that big model is that you decide to circle around if you're going to choose one. Okay, so that's the tool, and we're going to try these prompts here. And I'm going to copy this in, and then I'm going to come back to the screen that gives the instructions. Okay, so this one, again, you have to sign up. If anyone's having problems signing up, let me know. I kind of went through that, and I have an existing account, but I didn't have challenges, but hopefully you can sign with an email and sign up pretty easily. So on this one, what you're going to do is you're going to enter the prompts, and what you're going to do is instead of there's a drop down box here. Let me go to Perplexity with another screen. Yeah, so there's a box here, if you can see my screen, that allows you to use other models like OpenAI's models or the DeepSeek model or a function of their own functions here around generative AI. And I want you to select the deep research one. And the idea behind this is it's like almost like a really superpowered, I don't even like to use the word intern. Just think about it as someone on your staff that's really good at research on a topic. And so it gets you a baseline. And again, the more elaborate you get on your prompts, the better. This is an example. We're going to help Eileen, okay, do some research on the market, how she can be different than other cookies. Okay. So go ahead and put that in there and let that run. It's going to take a minute. It's going to show you the things that it's using for its research. Okay.
And this is constantly changing. I think the free account for Perplexity lets you do 5 deep research queries per
Correct.
day.
That's right.
And so just a heads up, most of these tools, when you're using the free accounts, have caps on usage that reset after 4 hours, 6 hours, the next day, whatever that might be.
A perfect time to start and re-engaging on some of the expensive options is after the competitor announces a huge launch, then they're like, oh, we'll offer this for free. So that's what's happening too. Like things are lowering in price, right? So anyways, you can see if you've already done prompt 1, you've finished. I think it takes a little while. You can do this on your own afterwards. It's just try a topic for your own business. The other thing about AI, which is really interesting, is you can use AI to write a better prompt. Does that make sense? So like you could take and say, this is kind of my prompt and what I'm trying to accomplish, put it in ChatGPT, have it help do it better. You could try and use Perplexity to help make it better, and then copy it into the tool with the better prompt. So it's kind of like this circular process that actually works pretty well.
Yep. So an example of that might be, hey, I'm a small business owner.
Yeah.
I want to use AI to help me generate a social media calendar. Write a prompt that I can enter into ChatGPT that will walk me through that process. And that's the first prompt you enter in, right? And you're like, hey, help me get the language
Yep.
to interact with these tools effectively.
That's right.
and then you bring it back into a new chat or bring it back into a different tool, paste that in, and it's like a recipe builder, I think of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you go back to like, okay, that if you have this kind of alongside, you can take a shot and then it's going to help you get to the better version of that. Okay. So maybe your search, what you did is still running. We're going to just go ahead and share in the chat observations. And then also like, how might this perplexity deep research tool be helpful in your work or personal life, right? So those are things that we'd love to hear. And just know on this deep research function, if you go over to ChatGPT, and Google has deep research now, ChatGPT has a deep research. They're all a little bit different, but they're doing similar things. I like the Perplexity one because it's free and it's showing you all the links in a really nice way, as it always does. But those other ones are super powerful. I recommend trying those out as well when you're trying to get smart at something. Go ahead and put those in the chat. So we're a little short on time. So I just am going to mention this one. And I like this one because it has a lot of broad application. It's an image generator. We probably all have Adobe on our team in some way today. They have Adobe Express, as I mentioned, which is kind of a spin-off. And then they have Firefly, which is their AI tool. So on this one, I'm going to just have you kind of do this on your own, keep it up, open it up. You do have to create an account, so you can do this afterwards. And the idea here is, so my wife is all in on this cookie selling, and she's kind of a superhero for my daughter, right? And you can see the grid she's creating. And so I was like, all right, what if we kind of imagine a persona? Sometimes when we're doing innovation, we imagine personas, and so that helps us contextualize who we're designing a product for example. So I was like, hey, what if we use Adobe Firefly to create a visual persona, right? And this is the person helping Eileen sell the cookies. And then the other thing is, it's a little crazy around our house because of that. And so when I run this and I say, hey, my prompt is a vision a household stressed out and a superhero parent helping, like it's generating a variety of options based on that simple prompt that I could use to envision who this is or for marketing. Again, you can imagine a variety of different capabilities here, but these are image generators that exist. And actually, if you go to that sign-in screen, now they're creating videos and a bunch of other outputs that can be used with Adobe Firefly. So super powerful tool, I believe, that's worth kind of trying out and experimenting with on your team. So we're going to keep moving along, but if you have any, like, hey, oh, that would be great to have an image creator, go ahead and put that in the chat. And if you generate one, like if you got through it or you have an account, go ahead and throw that in the chat.
I want to raise up, Kelsey had a really good comment in the chat that she'll create a prompt and then modify it, try it a few different times with different keywords or structure changes to see what the different results are. So she experiments to try to see like how to get to the right answer, the best answer for her. She also tells the ChatGPT tool or the LLM, the large language model, when she doesn't what she doesn't like about the result, and asks it for revisions or rewrites. And I think that's a really great point we didn't hit on too much today, but when you use Google, you type in your keywords and that's it. You get what you get.
Yeah.
And you might tweak a keyword, but you're not going to get something inherently different. With a large language model like ChatGPT or Claude or Perplexity, you can guide it. And so you can say, summarize this article for me and give it an article to look at. And you might not like the results because they're too vague, or maybe they use too much jargon that you don't understand, or maybe you want it in a bulleted format instead of paragraphs. All you have to do is type into that chat, hey, ChatGPT, format this in bullets that are easy to read without jargon, and it will revise those results for you.
Exactly. Exactly. It's a different way of working. Um, and to kind of build on challenges, and these are some common mistakes. There's different things, but these are kind of three big ones that I've observed, even in myself. Like as Vicky said, have a conversation. Don't put it in like you do a Google search and say, "Oh, this is the prompt," and then that's it. Kind of go back and forth. Uh, Forgetting to be kind of in the loop of what's happening on the other side, on the output, right? And that's where that lawyer got in trouble, is he just took the output and copied and pasted. And there's also been examples of college students, unfortunately, writing papers but not actually looking at what's being written. But you got to make sure that you're in the loop of the process, especially on the back end, to make sure it's not hallucinating and then not adding, as we mentioned earlier, enough context for the AI. The other thing that's kind of interesting that you can do is like be nice. There's actually a research that these models do better when you're nice to them. So say thank you, say please. Try not to be that ugly human directing the robots in a negative way. Um, so as we kind of move to the back end of this, considerations and principles to think about. This is a book I actually recommend getting, and the blog that he writes. It's super informative. Ethan Malik, Co-Intelligence, Living and Working with AI. Really a thought leader, especially on the innovation and entrepreneurship side of things. And he's got 4 rules as he thinks about, and these sort of have standed the test of the 2-year time frame that Gen AI has been around. Is, invite it to the table and understand what it's good at and not good at, including the individual tools. As I mentioned earlier, be in the loop of the process. So, make sure that you're understanding that it's having what you're looking for, and the output is really strong. For example, treat it like a person, give it a role, right? And that's going to help with things like prompting. And then the last one, I think, if you go back to the beginning, is really great, which is this idea of whatever you're using today is the worst version of this that you'll ever use. So you should be kind of revisiting tools that maybe didn't perform exactly as you needed them within a time frame to see and have things been updated. And then as you go through that, right now we're still in that phase of kind of copying and pasting. What have we done before? How have we worked with Google search before? And now we're trying to unlearn that, and you can see that in history, right? How the newspaper transitioned to the computer, and now you have things that are very native to that modality and platform. There's a lot of use cases that research has identified for small businesses and entrepreneurs, but you should be out there understanding use cases for your job and your company, and that just comes from experimentation. So you got to worry about privacy, obviously, in this process. And so I think having a strategy as an organization is helpful. When you're entering proprietary data into these tools. And then these are just some thoughts for you to think about on some next steps. And so I think it's really important to protect time during the week. Otherwise, like, our calendars get full. And you really need some free time to experiment. Yes, you're working it into your workflow, but like, you want to try Adobe Firefly, you got to make time for that. So that's number one. Again, just experiment on, like, look at your job and like, where am I spending time, or where can it have a big impact, and try the tool, see what's working, right? That experimental kind of mindset around use cases. I also think it is important to kind of stay up to date. You can see all the shifts that have happened because it does impact our broader life. There's, again, you can message me if you want to get on a few resources. This is one that I like, the AI Daily Brief. And there's a blog for this as well. Kind of just tells you everything that's happening. If that's too much, there's other sources of information out there that are credible. Maybe not on a daily basis, right? But just staying up to date. And then lastly, as an organization, like have a strategy. Like the research is your employees, if you're a leader, are using it, right? And so having an organizational strategy helps understand and provides clarity around when to use it, not to use it. And so I think that's super important for businesses of all sizes.
Yeah. Great,
So I know
Justin.
we're almost at time. I'm gonna kind of fast forward to the Q&A part, Vicky, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah, and I think we've answered the questions so far that
Okay,
people have entered. You know, if folks
yeah,
have a last minute question, I'd encourage them to enter it into the chat as we
okay,
approach our time here around 11.
yeah,
But I wanted to go back, briefly, Justin, to your point about time. Uh, the fundamental reason why Northland SBDC is doing this webinar series and will help folks build skills throughout those 5 webinars and beyond. We've got a preview here of something special coming in June as well. We want business owners to free up time to work on their business instead of just in their business. We know there are never enough hours in the day, right? We know that there will always be more opportunities for small business owners to grow their business, to do more, to just learn more all the time, right? AI, in my opinion, is a tool that helps you free up time from those repetitive, boring tasks that you have to do so that you can do the fun stuff, exploring.
that's right, exactly. Thank you
Awesome.
for that, Vicky. I just want to mention again, I'm happy to you know talk to folks. Got some lists around favorites when it comes to prompt learning or blogs. Happy to, if you connect with me on LinkedIn, provide that information. Or I know if you have questions, Vicky and that team, as well as myself, are happy to answer it. And then if you're interested in just kind of understanding AI more broadly as an organization, just let me know. But this is my LinkedIn. Feel free to connect there. And then I know that we just kind of going to the end here, which is this here. So
Yeah.
thinking about the webinar series that's upcoming. I think I saw Diane on the phone here. Super, super excited for some of these upcoming webinars as well. I don't know, Vicky, if you have any builds or thoughts
Yeah, our
on
next one's going to
signing
be
up.
on March 27th. You can go to our website, northlandsbdc.org, get training. I'll put that in the chat here in a minute for folks that are attending live. You can sign up for all of them. We will send out recordings. We'll have those on our YouTube channel following each webinar. It takes us a couple days to turn that around. But I also just want to preview, we have something big live and in person coming in June. And so June 2025, we'll be getting more information out about that in another few weeks or so. Just really excited to help lead the charge for small businesses around AI in Northeast Minnesota and beyond. I think there's a lot of opportunity. There are some risks, but there's risks in everything we do as well. And so we're here to give you tools, give you knowledge, and build those skill sets over time. And so this was meant to be a very introductory webinar today, and we're going to be getting more and more into those skills of using AI in the next 4 that we've got on the docket. Awesome. Justin, anything else that you'd like to mention? For those that are attending live, I mentioned in the chat, there's a survey that'll pop up when you close
Yeah,
Zoom. Please fill that out.
yeah,
We'd love to hear from you. Justin, thank you so much for taking time today
thanks.
to share knowledge and help build that foundation of what is generative AI.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you. And I'll be back, I think, for 2 more webinars. So we'll talk more during those webinars on other thoughts. So I'm really looking forward to it and think it's a super powerful opportunity for entrepreneurs and small businesses especially. So excited.
Great. Thanks so much.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody.